Well, our next guest was in College Park earlier this week as part of the Big Ten Network's annual preseason tour, checking out the Terps. He, of course, a man you see on BTN regularly, and you know him as the former head coach at Indiana and Vanderbilt and LSU. He's Coach Gerry DiNardo, and he's back with us now here on GCR. Coach, it's Glenn. It's always great to chat. Thanks for taking a couple of minutes for us.
Glad to be with you, Glenn. Thank you.
Coach, it's an interesting time, right? Because Maryland puts together 3 straight solid seasons, winning seasons, bowl wins, and you start to believe they're turning the corner, and then they go through a disappointing year a year ago. And I wonder if you felt like, did you sense that there is an amount of pressure or, I don't know, immediacy, like something that they are feeling down there, despite the fact that this is a really young team that they're going to be putting on the field?
You know, Glenn, it's a great question because I have this theory. When you look at the last few years with Maryland football, if you look at 2022 and 2023, they won 8 games. They won 2 bowl games. Then when you go to, I'm sorry, that was 21 and 22. When you go to 23, okay, they start off 5-0, right? And the conversation is Maryland ready to challenge the best teams in the conference? They lose their next 4 games, and they wind up not beating any of those teams. They come back last year, and they win 1 conference game. And my point is this. They got distracted in 2023 when everyone started saying they're going to challenge the best teams. That's the worst thing you want your team to hear. And now they're trying to dig out of that hole. And so I don't think this is an X and O year. I don't think this is a scheme year. I don't think this is anything but getting this team to play as hard as they've ever played, to win the 3 non-conference games they open up with, and to beat the matchup opponents and not worry about beating the best teams in the conference and getting distracted like they did a few years ago.
It's interesting. I obviously, you know, there'd be people around here that would say, boy, that doesn't sound like that's a heck of a goal, but I think that's the reality for Maryland football, right? And it's something I talk about all the time, Gerry, which is I think we're living in a pipe dream thinking that Maryland is going to compete with the top teams in the Big Ten. The sport is just not built that way. You want them to be competitive, and I think that should continue to be the goal moving forward.
Yeah, and to support your point is, in 1972, when Title IX was passed and the scholarships started getting cut for football so that our daughters could have the same opportunities as our sons had, when that started happening, it was the end of college football. We were losing all our scholarships, and we went from unlimited to 105. Then we went 105 to 95. Then we went to 105 to 85. And every time there's been a seismic change in college football, everyone thinks about all the negative and that it's not going to work. And yet, the haves are the haves, and the have-nots are the have-nots. And it's a have-not business. An Indiana can come along like they did last year. I'm not saying that can't happen, but you could pay them, not pay them. You could do NIL, not do NIL. I've never been, and I've been involved with college football since 1971 in one way or another. I've never seen a rule change or anything else change that makes a have a have-not and a have-not a have. Now, that can happen temporarily, but it won't last very long because the haves will not have it.
So at the center of this team, and I know you guys dove into it on Monday night, is the quarterback decision. And it's such a complicated conversation, Coach, because a lot of it's about what quarterback gives you the best chance to win, but I would assume that in this era, the other parts of the conversation matter a whole lot too. And, you know, wanting to make sure that you can keep a quarterback around that's as talented as Malik Washington has to come into play. And how do you make a decision like this in 2025 in this culture of college football if you're Mike Locksley?
Well, I don't think it's changed. I think it's pretty simple. Whoever wins the job in camp, we can't start coaching worrying about the portal and worrying about players leaving. Again, I go back to the haves and the have-nots. We just do whatever we can. The best thing for Malik or whoever starts a quarterback at Maryland is the run game on offense and being better on defense. I mean, the quarterback's the most important position, maybe the most important position of all sports. But you can't throw someone in there that's not ready and then expect them to win a game that you wouldn't have won if there wasn't someone else at quarterback. play the matchup opponents, beat the non-conference schools. I think that's where the focus has to be. They just have to rebound from the last year. And the last year, nobody liked it. Locke talked about he lost the locker room and he put his desk in the locker room. He's doing all the right things, saying all the right things. He's just got to make them come true.
If it is, and we're chatting with Gerry DiNardo here on GCR, if you believe that Malik Washington right now gives you the best chance to win, right? Do you feel like a true freshman quarterback, even someone this talented, can be ready to handle the enormity of what we're talking about? Like that you're playing essentially man down when you're Maryland football. And like, do you feel like this young man, as impressive as he is, and I've had the chance to get to know him for the last few years, he is a remarkable young man. But can a true freshman quarterback handle the enormity of all of that he be dealing with?
I believe a true freshman quarterback. Now, Malik, was limited yesterday, a couple days ago. Everyone knows that. So we didn't get to see him at full strength. Glenn, it depends who they're playing. Do I expect him to be good enough to beat the three non-cons that they start with? I don't have the schedule in front of me, but obviously I know what it is.
Of the world, right? Yes, I get it.
Right. Yeah. So I expect
Florida
them
Atlantic,
to do that.
Northern Illinois, yeah.
Okay, now keep going, and who else in the conference now can they match up with? Yeah, you win the non-con, and you win the matchups in the conference. So do I think he can do that? I mean, again, I didn't see him a lot 2 days ago, but yes, I think any quarterback could do it. If they don't have a run game, no, he can't do it. If they can't stop any man defense, no, they can't do it.
Well,
but if they support him with the other 21 players, yeah, I think he can do it.
Well, and as you know, obviously one of the biggest issues Maryland had is like keeping quarterbacks upright over the years. Is they just don't have the same type of alignment as they have at some of those schools in the Midwest. Gerry, I go back to something you said because I know it needs to be the case that you make the decision based on who gives you the best chance to win. Is it that simple in 20? Like, do you have the luxury as a coach of making that call, or like can you ignore all of those other factors? I know Mike alluded to some of those ahead of the season and the struggles that he was having with who was getting paid and who wasn't getting paid. But like, can you just block all of that out and not think about it when you do this?
I think you can. I think you have to. I don't think you have a choice. You're going. This is Locke's seventh year. I mean, he has proven that this program can be better than it was last year. I think that's what he has to prove. He doesn't. I'm not saying he has to have a great record. I'm not saying he has to upset some big teams. He just has to get back to where it was before this crazy narrative that they were ready to challenge for the Big Ten championship.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the root of what happened. That became the narrative instead of the next game becoming the narrative. That became the narrative instead of beating a conference team that you have better players than. So it changed the narrative, and I think it's doable. I think it has to be.
To your point, there's a weird thing about this year, which is that when you look at the schedule, it's not quite as daunting as certainly, back when we were doing the division thing in the Big Ten. There's no Ohio State on the schedule this year. There's no Penn State on the schedule this year. When you allude to the idea of like, hey, go beat these teams, is there a world where maybe you do that and you could build up a little bit of momentum going into that portion of the schedule?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not trying to say that Maryland can't beat those best teams in the conference and all that. I'm just saying it's got to be one step at a time. It's got to be people will continue to support you if you're beating the teams that you should beat. From firsthand experience, when you lose to a team as a coach that you have better talent than, I mean, that's on you. I mean, there's no greater pressure than a coach losing to a team who has less talent. So that's where it starts for me with the team that's on the rebound.
Right.
And Locks has done that. Locks has done that until last year. And then we start talking about competing in the Eastern Division. I didn't think that was smart. I'm not saying them. I'm saying everyone following Maryland. I got tired of guys on BTN desk talking about that. And I kept saying, you don't just all of a sudden challenge the big teams. The best teams. They've been doing this for 100 years. It's going to take a little bit more time than being 5-0.
What do you say to people that, and you know this exists, right? Like that eternally, if you're not doing those things, then it doesn't matter what you're doing. And that would bring up some of the negatives. I think from our conversations, I love Mike Locksley. I think Mike Locksley is doing literally as good of a job as can be done at Maryland football because based on my relationship with Ralph Regan, I know exactly how difficult the job is at the University of Maryland. It is an impossible job. But there will be always people that will point out, right, but he's 33-41 as the head coach at Maryland. Like, how do you describe to people what you think of the job that Mike Locksley has done here overall?
Well, I mean, I think he's done a terrific job. I think that his best coaching is not behind him, and his best coaching better be this year because I think it's fair. I think that's a fair expectation. And if he has the best year, he's revamped his staff. One of the issues is he only had 103 at camp. He's allowed to have 120, okay? But he couldn't have 120 because some of the things that the administration had said to him. And so it was a miscalculation on both sides of it. So, he wasn't even 3 deep in the offensive line 2 days ago. And, there's a lot of things that he can't say that are out there. It's a very difficult job. I'll say this though, it's not as difficult a job as it was when it was East and West.
Sure.
So that's a plus.
Yeah, obviously, you're 2 of the top 3 teams in the country. You get them off the schedule. That's going to be a good thing. There's just no way around that. I'll follow that up. We referenced how young of a team it is. Like that's the one thing that you could say that there is constantly NFL talent coming out of Maryland, and this past year was no different, and this is a young team that lost a lot of pieces. Obviously, their 2 top wide receivers. Is there any world in which, like, maybe after the year they had last year, that's a good thing for Maryland, that they have so many, like, that taste maybe doesn't exist for a lot of these guys? It's almost like you can kind of start over again.
Well, if you're not motivated to start over after winning one conference game a year ago, I don't know what would motivate a team. And again, you and I are both great fans of Locke, and I think he's doing all the right things. There's been a lot said about this. He has a sign outside his locker room, leave your jewelry
right.
and your money, but
Right.
So I'll move my desk in the locker room if I have to. I mean, he can't be doing anything more than he's doing. And the players have to realize that. And, what player on the team wants to start a season where we won one conference game the previous year who's not highly motivated? I don't care what year you are. If you're on that team and you're coming off a 1-win season in the conference, it's not about X's and O's and scheme this year. It's about attitude. It's about toughness. It's about being together. It's about not arguing about NIL and the money issues that we're all adjusting to. They got to put it behind them and move on.
I hear you, Coach. I completely get it. Coach, as far as the league's concerned, we bring up Ohio State, Penn State, Maryland, who won't see this year. I feel like the team that, to me, is the biggest wild card is Michigan, right, who we saw what they did at the end of the year last year. They beat Ohio State. They beat Alabama. The defense was still very much real. We've gotten to know Derek Moore really well over the last few years, Baltimore kid who's come into his own. Are they able to get back to what you would expect from Michigan this year? Can that offense be more productive, and are they a bigger factor than maybe we realized going into the season?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on top of the head. I mean, Sherrod has to be loving this. I said this during media days. I mean, this is insane. We're talking about a conference that has 18 teams, 2 historic powers, Michigan and USC. We're not talking about them being in a 12-team playoff. Right. Now, that's crazy, right? I mean, those 2 brand names, and we go to media days, and we're not talking about them competing for the Big Ten championship and the conference championship. So if there was ever a time when Sherrod can work under the radar, it seems like this year. And so my guess is this might be the most fun he's ever going to have in coaching, because if they have a bad year, he'll be under a lot of pressure. If they have an average year, he'll be okay. But if they have a great year, he'll take great satisfaction in being under the radar and doing a great job coaching. I think Michigan is a fabulous watch this year.
And then I guess the one other, I kind of dismissed Ohio State, but do they have a quarterback? Is there definitely a quarterback on that roster that they're ready to go try to back up and win another national title this year?
There always should be a quarterback.
It's Ohio State. I do understand, right?
We haven't been there yet. I think Ryan's very pleased with his quarterback position. The interesting thing is, we talked about in media days with Ryan about last year. He doesn't want to continue to play with the one and done quarterback. He said, it was great and it worked out. Will Howard won the national championship, but they want to continue to recruit high school guys. They want to continue to bring guys up through the ranks of quarterback, and it looks like they have 3 of them that are talented enough to do that. But I think there'll always be a good enough quarterback, especially now with the portal. There'll always be a good enough quarterback at Ohio State.
To your point, they might have 4. I do get it. And then lastly, because I know you were at Penn State last night, are they ready to, I feel like it's the thing that everybody's been asking James Franklin for years, right? They expand the playoff. They finally get in. They seem to be on the doorstep. Are they ready to, with Drew Aller, another year, make that ascent to compete for a national title this year?
James has got a great answer to that, right? He says that we compete for it every year, which is true. The counter to that argument is you've never been this close at this time of year since you've been here, because you have a veteran roster, you've got a returning quarterback, the coaching staff is, just as good as it can be. They've got all the support, and they have a 12-team playoff. We did a study at the network. No team would have benefited since James was at Penn State. I might be a little bit off on this, but the statistic is that no team would have made the playoffs more than Penn State had there been a 12-team playoff since James got here. And so the other advantage I think they have, and this is really interesting, we heard this from the coaches. Nobody's really talking about this. When you ask a coach that was in the playoffs, how could you make the playoffs better? You know what they say? They say, in bowl games that you get gifts, and they do a lot for the players and this and that. He said in these playoffs, it's just like another game. So they would like to see more things go to the players, and I bring that up because the other thing that Penn State has that they haven't had in the past to win the national championship, they were in the national championship, right? They were an interception away maybe from winning it against Notre Dame. And that experience where the kids aren't thinking this is a bowl game, it's a business trip, so on and so forth. That's a valuable experience. And a veteran team like Penn State, when you give them a valuable experience, it makes the team even better. And I think they have all the things they need to win a national championship. To James's point, not that they haven't in the past, it just looks a lot better today than it did in previous years.
Tonight's show is at Rutgers, correct?
No. Tonight's show is at. Oh yes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yes, it is.
No worries.
I'm a little road weary.
No worries, Gerry. We totally understand, and we had some confusion in there. The magic of radio. Make sure you're checking that out, and it continues every night on the Big Ten Network for the next couple of weeks as we get ready for the start of football season. Gerry DiNardo, always appreciate you, my friend. Thanks for spending a couple of minutes with us. Looking forward to do this again as we get into the season. Thank you so much.
Thanks, I appreciate being with you.